All right. Hey, what's up, guys? So we've got a pretty loaded podcast tonight. I brought on a few guests, and this was something that was kind of looming in my head, throughout the woke wars, the woke right wars, and the Candace cult stuff that was going on. There are particular individuals online, influencers, obscure YouTubers, as Candace has called it, Mossad agents, and I'm being funny here, but these are these people that Candace has particularly called out or has suggested otherwise, other than just being genuine YouTubers who are finding contradictions in her narratives. They've been great at keeping receipts, at proving things, and so I thought that I'd bring them on for a discussion. And you guys will know them if you guys are online, especially on X, and you follow the same sort of content that I do and we talk about. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring them on. We're going to hit the ground running. I'm just going to level set some ground rules before we go on. Yeah, I've got some mods in the comments. Keep it respectful. You don't have to agree with everything that we talk about. However, if you are a troll, if you are being rude, if you're being vile, if you are just using slurs and slander, I have instructed my mods to just blockety block ya. You're out. You are out. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my guests: Paramount Tactical Gary, Melton, Jeanette, and Nathan Livingstone. How are you guys?
Good.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I am so excited about this discussion. Now, and I believe that what we've been, experiencing lately is a big psyop. Just to lay it clear out, I know that many of you have been around on social media. Some of you are newer on social media. I'm going to give you guys, let's just have a round table, give you guys an introduction, an introductory, little frame here, so that way you can introduce yourselves, what your platform is, and what your claim to fame is. So whoever wants to go first, just jump in.
I'll go first. Hey, so thanks for watching. My name is Gary Melton. I'm the owner of Paramount Tactical, and I have a YouTube channel that really started out as a gun channel, Paramount Tactical as well. And you can also follow us on X and Instagram and Facebook and all the things. But I've always covered a lot of political things, and we've always had a Wednesday night evening live stream where we covered conservative politics. And what got me into this whole thing specifically was the fact that I was a big fan of Charlie Kirk's, and I've been following him for years. Not only did I follow him, but I studied him in the way that he communicates, and I was very interested in understanding why he was so effective. And of course, when he was murdered, I took a real personal interest in this. And then also coming from, I was in special operations. I've done a few other things. I wanted to know what happened. And just like many people out there, I didn't trust the government, and I wanted to know for myself what was going on with this. And I spent a lot of time, actually went to UVU. I actually had a 3D model made of the UVU campus using some 3D drones. And I thought it was really important to investigate this, to confirm or deny what we're hearing was true. And then I also started right off the bat, we were flooded with all these crazy conspiracies, talking about palm guns, tunnels, flying drones, exploding microphones. Now we have the electrified microphone. And I started debunking those. And this was before any narrative existed. And what I noticed right off the bat was that there was some sort of artificial thing taking place where just saying, hey, you know what, it's stupid to think that a palm gun by his security was used. I immediately started getting hit with, you're a Fed, you're paid by Israel. And this was, we were getting flooded with what was very obvious to me was bots. And then we kind of went off into the direction of Candace Owens later on. And I'd been seeing her in the periphery for a while, and I just got to a point where I was kind of fed up with what I felt like was just standing by while other Americans were being tricked into believing something that just wasn't true. And I just got fed up with it, started speaking about it. I thought I was going to lose 3/4 of my followers over it.
Yep.
Luckily, that's not what happened. There was a lot more support than I thought. And then I ran into Natalie Denise. I saw what Nathan was doing as well. And I think between what we were doing, and once I started posting that stuff, I saw a big change. And I saw the fact that courage is indeed contagious, and I think we collectively, the few influencers, whatever you want to call us out there, calling out this nonsense. I think it's been extremely effective, and I'm just glad to be here. So thanks for inviting me, Natalie.
Here, here. Thank you. And by the way, guys, this is a $28,000 podcast because each of us are getting paid $7,000. Just kidding. I wish. Where do I sign up?
Well,
Okay.
technically it's shekels, and 7,000 shekels is actually $34.95 USD. So it's not that much.
Oh.
Sweet girl.
Whoever wants to go next, Nathan or Jeanette.
Nathan, go.
Well, for me, it goes back probably over 3 years ago. A quick summary of me is that I lost my job because of vaccine mandates in Australia. So I started posting videos on social media about the COVID response in Australia, and then that then led me to making videos about Andrew Tate, because I saw the same circles that I was running in embrace Andrew Tate. And the more I looked into that guy, the more I was disturbed by what I found. Right. So I started covering him. And then it's very clear as soon as you start covering Andrew Tate that Candace Owens is in bed with Andrew Tate, primarily through her husband. They go way back. So I made my first video on Andrew Tate that went viral. And it seemed like everyone on the right who was a prominent commentator denounced Andrew Tate following that video, except for Candace Owens, who flew all the way to Romania to run cover for him. And they actually speak about my video and they say it took things out of context. But that's how she got on my radar. That's how I met Natalie. We've been kind of covering that for years now. Over time, I've realized that Candace Owens deploys the exact same techniques that Andrew Tate uses in terms of what I believe is manipulation. Andrew Tate's suing me, by the way. So you'll notice I need to be careful about what I say because of that lawsuit. But yeah, I mean, so it's the way she defended Andrew Tate was particularly disgusting, and that's when I realized that she has zero morality, and she'll do anything for a engagement. And even knowing that, I've been absolutely shocked by what she's done since Charlie Kirk's death. It's been very good. It's been very I don't know. It's given me hope. The amount of people like Gary and others who've now kind of brought more and more attention to just how disgusting Candace Owens is, and exposing the tactics of how she lies and manipulates the truth.
You're here. Yep.
Nice to meet you. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I just love studying great minds. And I thought Candace Owens was one of the people with a great mind. I was a fan of her. I actually donated money to her when she got fired from Daily Wire. And I listened to her for about a year until just recently. I was like, what? With the whole thing, her investigation about Charlie Kirk. So I just started studying her. And the more I did, the more I read about her, the more I watched her, I listened to her. I'm like, I actually wanted to stop and just like ignore and pretend that I never saw anything, but then I just couldn't. I'm like, I have to say something. I need to do something about this. People are listening and believing. And she's talking about real people like Tyler Boyer, Andrew Kovac, Erica Kirk, and these are real people. And so, and I was a fan of Charlie Kirk, and I did attend his events and blah blah. But yeah, I mean, I really wanted to ignore the whole manipulation and the tactics, but I'm like, no, I just can't. I just have to do something. So actually, I connected with Gary, and that's how I'm here.
Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I think everybody's unique perspective, skill set, things that they have looked at themselves, their own respective digs on this entire thing is very valuable in this conversation. Now, like I kind of prefaced at the very beginning, I think the mass psychosis, the psychological aspect to this is what I'm most interested in. So I'm going to kind of just go through a list of questions, and it's just free flowing from here. Just I'll kind of punt it to the respective person, and if we want to popcorn through and have our own commentary, we resonate with something that somebody says, then we can do that. So the role of deception in building narratives is one of the first topics. So this one: how does Candace Owens' pattern of selective editing, unverified claims, for example, accusing National Guard units or TPUSA staffers, insiders without evidence, and walking back accusations contribute to a tapestry of deception that fosters a mass psychosis? Now, Nathan, you've documented her long history with Andrew Tate and on narrative control. Does this show a consistent method that preys on audience vulnerabilities like anxiety over betrayal?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. She definitely has this pattern where this is the question, right? Candace Owens. We all know that Candace Owens lies. If you're not biased and under her spell, it's clear that she lies and manipulates the truth. Now the question is, and Jeanette might be a good person she will be a good person to answer this, is how conscious is this? Is she consciously lying, or is it a subconscious thing where she's unknowingly doing this? I believe that it's very, very conscious. And I know that because I'm a video editor. And I see how she deliberately manipulates footage to be able to craft a narrative. The first time I saw that was because, like I said, she used my video. And so what she did was, in this interview back in July 2023, there's this footage of Andrew Tate where he's seemingly confessing to using a human trafficking method called the Loverboy method, where it's about manipulating girls and women into believing that you're in love with them, but it's always with this hidden agenda that you actually intend to use them in sex work, and to then reap the benefits, the rewards of that, the money. Now Andrew Tate taught a course where it seems very much like that's exactly what he's teaching, where he talks about a way of recruiting women and hiding that agenda underneath it. Now Candace Owens played a clip of that in the Andrew Tate interview. Now it's quite hilarious because even in this clip, it's very clear what's going on. It's very, very clear. But it's also clear to anyone who's seen the full clip that they tried to use the most innocuous part of that. And so what she did was she played this clip, and then she allowed Andrew Tate to explain what was happening in this video. And he said, oh, this video is a dating video where it talks about how hard it is to run a webcam business while also carrying on relationships with women. Now, when you see that video, it's very clear that that's not what it is. He's literally talking about, this is what you need to do to get women to believe that you're in love with them, blah, blah, But the thing is that I made a video where I showed this, that she selectively edited out the things on the other side of that, and just chose that one part. Because on the other side, it's very, very clear that that's not what it is. Right. Now, that's something she obviously did with her team. And this comes back last year, where she did exactly the same thing with Tyler Robinson, where she crafted this narrative of these messages that were then put out by authorities, where he used vehicle, outfit, and so she used that to say, oh, this is very strange wording, no man in his early 20s would use a vehicle. She really held on to that, and it's been something that her and her followers have really used. It's one of the primary things to say, oh, this is so obviously not him. He would never say that. Now, what happened was footage came out from a accident with body cam, and in it, Tyler Robinson's there. It's about 6 minutes long, and they use that footage in her video, and in it he refers to his car as a car, and she said, "Look, he referred to a car as a car. clearly he doesn't use vehicle. Now, anyone who watched that video, and it's only 6 minutes long, it doesn't take long at all, would realize, it's about 2 minutes later, he then says vehicle. And that doesn't work for her narrative. So what did her and her team do? They just deleted it, cut it, and just pretended that it didn't exist. And they just presented this as saying, see, he used car, not vehicle. That's deceptive. And how I know that that's consciously her lying is because, it became very, very clear that this video existed where he said vehicle later. I even made a similar video to the one I made a few years ago with Andrew Tate, where I pointed out, look, here is the clear reality. And obviously Candace Owens has not presented this. So that became clear to everyone. That video, he says vehicle. Now, did Candace Owens issue a correction? Did she say, oh, sorry, guys, we missed that. We got it wrong. Our team dropped the ball. No, she just pretended like it didn't exist and just carried forward with her narrative. And that's the pattern over and over again that she does. It doesn't matter if the truth comes out later. She never issues a correction. She never says, look, sorry, we got that wrong. My mistake. Here you go. She'll do that with alibi. She'll do that with everything. She just keeps moving the goalposts, or she just deflects and move on to some other thing. This is a pattern that she does over and over again, where to me it's very clear that she's consciously lying to her audience. And I believe that her audience is aware of this, but they have, again, Jeanette is the person to talk about. They have something where they're aware of this and they live in denial. They just completely block it out because their reality is formed by what Candace Owens says, and they're unable to let anything else come into that.
So, Jeanette, I'm going to kind of refine this pivot to you, and just to kind of comment on that, Nathan. I do remember within that interview that she did with Andrew Tate, she completely redefined human trafficking. I mean, in her own way. She took human trafficking. That's not human trafficking is what, when you kidnap kids. I'm paraphrasing here, but she said something along the lines of, you kidnap kids and you take them in a truck, which I think she was just referring to a memory of The Sound of Freedom, a scene of A Sound of Freedom. She doesn't really truly know what human trafficking is. So I thought that was pretty, nefarious to even do that, to kind of, reshape what the meaning of that word. Now, to Jeanette, I have just to refine that question a little bit more. Mass formation psychosis often starts with free-floating anxiety channeled into unifying narrative. How do intermittent bombshell teases without full disclosure create hypnotic reinforcement, turning individuals to doubt a group adherence? And what role does projection or gaslighting play to deepen this?
Projection and gaslighting. I mean, I have so much to say, but is it okay because in order for us to understand why her audience kind of worship her or cannot let go of the fact that maybe what she's doing is wrong, I think we need to understand who Candace is, and what is she about.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's okay, I actually want to ask Candace questions.
Yep.
And hopefully she will answer us. Hopefully, but if not, I hope that some of her followers actually get to listen to this and come up with their own conclusions. So, Candace, you have said that you were kicked out of your home at age 14 and lived with a boyfriend for 6 months, describing yourself as one of those kids. How did those early experiences shape your understanding of relationships, authority, and personal boundaries? Question 2. Years later, in your debate with 20 feminists and on the podcast called Whatever, you often gave the impression that you were not one of those kids. And maybe I'm wrong, Candace. So can you tell us whether you ever talked about your past in those debates, or explain how those early experiences shaped the beliefs you now promote for women? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Question 3. You've said that from about ages 8 to 18, you read only fiction books, and that you began reading nonfiction only after you became interested in politics. How did spending almost a decade reading only fiction affect how you understand the world's complexity and complicated issues in general? Next question. In 2007, you sued the Stanford Board of Education after reporting racist death threats voicemails. In 2024, you publicly stated that you were again receiving death threats, but this time from the French government. Given that, according to you, your own parents kicked you out of your home at age 14, and that you later received death threats from students connected to Stanford Board of Education, and that you now say you're receiving death threats from the French government, how do you understand this pattern of death threat claims appearing at major phases of your life? Next question. When you decided to work as an intern at Vogue magazine in 2011 2012, was your goal at the time to move into Hollywood or the entertainment industry? Because this happened around the same time as your online modeling and acting profiles were found, and you participated in music videos as well. And the reason I ask that question is because we know how much she hates Hollywood. Hollywood's satanic, she says. Question 6. In 2015, when you started the project called Degree 180, you published articles criticizing conservative Republicans and the Tea Party movement and mocking Donald Trump, including comments about his penis size. During that same period, you also wrote articles stating that cheating and having affairs could be romantic, and another article suggesting that it could be smart for a woman to marry gay men. Even if you identified at that time as a Democrat or a liberal, those views are not commonly held within those groups. So, what values were guiding those arguments at that time? I'm curious. Question 7. In 2016, you launched socialautopsy.com, a project that involved publicly identifying individuals accused of online harassment. After the project was suspended and you were later doxxed, you blame the left for that. And if is that true? And did that experience contribute to your shift toward conservatism? And if that's true, is that also true that you asked Laura Loomer for advice on how to rebrand yourself during that time? But more importantly, what specifically changed in how you saw the world that made you feel the need to rebrand yourself? Question 9. You've said that if Tyler Boyer had been the one interviewing you, you likely would not have been hired. Given that Turning Point USA has hired thousands of people over the years, why do you think Tyler Boyer would not have hired you if he had been the one interviewing you? Next question. You've said that you use Charlie. This is crazy. She says that she used Charlie Kirk's credit card to buy airline tickets to UK without asking his permission to use his credit card. I'm just curious, what was the nature of your professional or personal relationship with him that made you feel comfortable enough to do that? Question 11. In December 2018, during the UK trip, you met George Farmer and that guy John Muffin. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but about the same time, so she meets George Farmer and John Muffin. Okay, Candace, back to you. You met John Muffin and George Farmer. Shortly afterward, in 2019, you made comments at a Turning Point UK event stating that nationalism itself was not problematic and that Hitler's issue was his global ambition rather than nationalism confined to Germany. How do you reflect on the timing? Because I know how much you love the whole timelines. And so, how do you reflect on the timing and substance of those remarks today? Next question. After 2019, TPUSA distanced itself from you and you were no longer on the payroll. Even though you later spoke at the events, we know that. I was there, like the Michigan event in 2024. But how did that distancing affect how you viewed TPUSA after that? You were no longer on the payroll. I have two more questions. Question 13. When you were hired by the Daily Wire, is it fair to say that Ben Shapiro was aware of your earlier comments about Hitler and still chose to give you the benefit of the doubt by believing your explanation and your stated intent behind those comments. Two more questions, sorry. In March 2024, the Daily Wire ended its relationship with you. And in April 2024, you traveled to London and converted to Catholicism. What was the intention behind this? And what changed again in your worldview? Because this reminded me of Social Autopsy period, where after doxing, you asked Laura Loomer for advice how to rebrand yourself and then move toward conservatism, except this time it's Catholicism. And last question. Is it possible for you and your followers to consider that Erica Kirk is not a perfect human being like all of us, and that Turning Point USA is not a flawless organization like any organization, but at the same time, your conclusion that they betrayed Charlie could be wrong, especially if this conclusion was influenced by your dream?
It's crazy you got to throw that last part in there, but it's true. She did a whole podcast on it today.
Today.
Right. She elaborated on that dream.
So when you hear, Natalie, all of this, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just asking questions.
Right.
Now, if you can, for a second, for just a minute, forget how much we disagree with her and how much we're against what she's doing. Just think about, like, you just got to know this person based on what I just gave, the questions I gave. Okay, how do you think about her now? What's your conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I you mentioned some things. I knew some of her history. I know that people are avid about finding out what her becoming Candace was, what her journey was. There were a few things that you sprinkled in there that I didn't know. Especially growing up and kind of, I'm more faith focused, and I have a biblical perspective on things. And so hearing her testimony and kind of tying in what you're asking her, it illustrates that she's it seems to be that she's a troubled person, and that she's had a very, dark past and upbringing. That's just simply what I bring out of it.
What about all the changes, like, quickly?
Right. The pivots. Yeah, she pivots quite often. And, throughout this entire ordeal, it does seem to be that she shifted from one political perspective to another. And, this is why I'm having this conversation with you guys, because not only did it pivot so quickly, but it pivoted alongside with other influencers that were also chiming the same sort of song with her, and they were coinciding in their rhetoric and their narratives. So yes, Candace Owens, she might be somebody who's more prominent and pioneering this particular narrative and these particular rhetorics and infiltrating the minds of many patriots and many Christians. But I see a bigger picture that many other influencers are helping her in this endeavor. So it's interesting that, yes, she does pivot quite often and quite rapidly. But the fact that other people are also echoing the same narratives is what concerns me. So yeah, that's the bigger picture.
The bigger picture, yes.
I'm gonna pivot to Gary here. From your Green Beret perspective, how do the baseless military related accusations, for example, the National Guard, she has, of course, also implicated that because somebody is a veteran and they're a pastor, that somehow they have to be some sort of military operation. How does that mirror propaganda tactics that induce collective delusion, dismissing facts for emotional outrage?
Yeah, the first time that I really heard her go after the military was when she was talking about the maroon shirts. And then she went on to say, I think this was a military operation. And then she went on to say it was, I think the National Guard was involved, which is, look, if you know anything about the National Guard, it's pretty ridiculous to say that. So, it was very, and then as I studied and started listening more and more, I sat down at one point, I've watched like 25 episodes on my own straight through. sometimes listening to, the most I ever did was 8 episodes in a single day. And there is this weird naivete when it comes to the military, but also this weird suspicion that goes along with it. And she clearly doesn't understand it. And she's clearly very suspicious of the military. Obviously, if somebody's in the military, if their father's in the military, they're now suspect, which is just like,
I have
clearly,
to ask you, Gary, do you really
Yeah.
believe she believes that?
I do. I do on that. Like, she gets over her skis on things she doesn't know, and then things that she's completely ignorant of, which I think this is what this is confined to, this particular case. She's just completely ignorant of it. And then she states things that she's thinking in her mind as facts, and now it becomes a fact. That's one of the things she does. You know, anyone that speaks out of ignorance with confidence is extremely dangerous. And that's one of the things that she's, quite frankly, very good at. So, you know, this comes across to other people that don't really understand the military, don't know anything about the military. That just becomes a fact that's thrown out there. And this person has said it with such confidence that now I believe it as well. And, you know, that's why we call con men, because they're confidence men, and they speak with confidence. They tell you these things and they're easily believed. So I do think in that particular instance, this is one of those things that she's just, you know, just wholesale ignorant of and doesn't understand it, and then has drawn her own conclusions and then shapes her worldview on that particular aspect of it. And, you know, that's what we have going on with that.
Right. So we're going to pivot to the next topic, emotional arousal and identity fusion. So Candace Owens uses dramatic language like the horror stories, betrayal, linking Kirk's death to unrelated conspiracies like Brigitte Macron, MK Ultra, a plethora of other things I'm sure you guys know, to spike emotional arousal, making a disagreement feel like a personal attack, and fusing identities with her worldview. Nathan, from exposing contradictions, for instance, vetting failures within Mitch, timeline errors, and of course, Gary, I'm going to punt this to you as well. How does cognitive overload push audiences towards hypnotic acceptance, especially when she frames her show as God's platform?
Yeah, that is what she does. It is cognitive overload. You know, she'll throw out so many dots. So she will do something like military, and she'll just throw that out there like military, you know, and then she'll do something like psychology out there, you know, MK Ultra, all these things. One of my favorite things to do is she'll go on these rants. You know, there's before Charlie Kirk died. I like posting things from before Charlie Kirk died because they're so insane that to me, I found it absolutely absurd that anyone thought that it was credible that she was in any way going to solve any kind of a mystery. She literally was attempting to somehow shoehorn Brigitte Macron into being in the Stanford prison experiment in America in 1971, and it's just pure crackpot gibberish. So I always like to show that because you got the Megyn Kellys and these other people who seemingly were reputable. I no longer see them as because they vouched for Candace Owens, to show this is so crazy. But like what I like to do is she'll go on a long rant. Well, she'll start with HBO White Lotus is popular. That contains incest. Why are they trying to shovel down incest down, you know, the audience's throat? Oh, I looked into White Lotus, and there was a White Lotus in China in the 18th century. Oh, Brigitte Macron's family, a Trogneau from the background, was in China like within the same 100 years. Oh, this connects to the French Enlightenment that then connects to you know, America and the founding of America to do with Freemasons. And it's this long 6-minute rant where you're like, it feels like schizophrenia, where you're bouncing around, right, and the connections are so like obscure. So I like to try and cut that down to retain it. Nothing's taken out of context, but to show this is a 6-minute rant to show this is how she connects these things. And it's like what you said, it's this cognitive overload where it's like none of these things connect whatsoever, but she just throws so much at her audience. They can't follow it. And they're just like, oh, okay, well, Candace is saying this. I trust Candace. So there must be something here. But there's
Right.
always a point that she'll begin with, to a point that she wants to end with, that she needs to kind of ferry her audience through this rough waters to then get to this place. So then she can then, push whatever narrative she wants to push, at that point in time. And I almost was relieved when the Egyptian planes came into the narrative with the Charlie Kirk stuff, because I was like, good, we're returning back to this nonsense. Like, thank goodness she's run out of legitimate tips from people, like legitimate stories.
Showed
My
up.
hope was let's pivot back to this nonsense and get away from accusing actual real people of horrible things.
Right.
She's now at this middle ground where she's kind of like, one side, one foot on the platform, one foot on the train, and I think she's trying to toggle that. My hope is that her audience is it's starting to wind down as people realize, oh, Candace is not someone to take seriously. But yeah, that is what she does, and even with the TPUSA Charlie Kirk investigation, you see that she throws so many things, and she hopes that some stuff sticks. And I think that she likes to use whatever can get her attention from that she'll then kind of jump on that. And it's a separate thing, but it's a similar thing that she does where she'll throw stuff out there. If it gets outrage, she'll then use that to say, look, I'm over the target. There's outrage from this. Because she said something outrageous, but she then claims that must be credible because people are outraged by it. So then she'll then kind of hop on that and realize, oh, I can use this. I can engagement farm off this. But yeah, the cognitive overload, I haven't heard that, but that's absolutely what she does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Natalie, just to comment about the emotional arousal you talked about and the cognitive over. So you guys noticed every time she has a show right before, like 30 minutes or an hour before, she posted on Twitter and Instagram story, that's when she's performing the emotional arousal tactic. Okay, so she has the headlines where this is going to change everything, or I found the last puzzle of the piece, or last piece of the puzzle, or whatever. She has those, so she does it every time, like 30 minutes or an hour before the show. And I don't know if she does it on Facebook too, but Instagram, I know she does it through stories and on Twitter. And also what you guys were talking about, what Nathan or Nathan, sorry. What Nathan just talked about is called narrative stacking, anomaly pileup. Basically, for example, the TPUSA verified lies. You guys remember that sheet she did, TPUSA verified lies?
Yeah. Yep. Her
Which
Word
is
document.
exactly. So which is she puts a lot of accusation next to each other, so it feels like something bad must be happening, and none of them were actually proven. But so how it works, it's just the accumulation many claims creates the impression of systemic deception through volume rather than proof. That's how it works basically. But yeah, she definitely used those two tactics, and I have many more, like the authority framing, association mapping, guilt by proximity, implied causality, pattern hunting, chaos framing, authority mimicry, moral contamination, belief ownership. I have many tactics that she's using, and I can suggest some books you can read to learn those tactics. But for me, I no longer believe that she believes what she's saying.
Right.
I don't want to get sidetracked, but I do find it really interesting how she uses different platforms, like what you just said, Jeanette.
Mhm.
I'm not on Instagram, but the stuff I've seen on Instagram, it seems to be maybe the most insane stuff that she pushes out there, whereas X is actually quite moderate compared to even her episodes. So I do find that interesting how she appears to use different platforms and kind of cultivate different audiences or different like sides of what she's trying to push appear on different platforms. I do find that interesting. I don't want to get sidetracked by that.
Yeah, no, and that's an interesting point. I do want to comment on what Jeanette just said because, as you mentioned, she does utilize, Instagram. Now, there's like a psychology for different social media platforms. So, for instance, Twitter, X, for a long while, it was literary. You went on X, you went on Twitter to read tweets. You went on Twitter to write tweets, right? So it was more literary. That was the psychology you entered Twitter. with. On Instagram, it's more audio visual. So you went onto Instagram expecting to see images, expecting to consume video. So I do find it interesting. And I like that you pointed that out, that she does utilize different psychologies per platform. And Jeanette, I do want to piggyback on what you said. Do you personally think that I don't believe, this is my personal belief, I don't believe that she's writing her own shows. Now, Jay Witt Podcast, shout out to Jay Witt Podcast, by the way. He made a really interesting point that he personally does not believe that she's actually live, but rather she pre-records her podcasts. And so that makes me wonder who is writing her shows, because to me it's very crafty, it's very cunning, but it's also very intricate the way that her shows are produced. I don't believe, because of all the mistakes that she makes, cutting out certain portions that Nathan usually catches, reading off of what I believe a teleprompter, and she mispronounces things. I believe that her shows are being written. What's your opinion on that?
But the fact that it's pre-recorded, I doubt, because like 2 months ago when I don't know, sorry, 4 months ago when she was talking about Kanye West, I actually through super chat I sent something like a comment or question, and she read it, so it was live, it was not pre-recorded. But in terms of someone writing her script, I mean, it's really, but she's not stupid. She's smart enough to know if this is not good, that not to continue. She's the final person approving, reading. It's not.
Uh-oh. Candace got her.
Oh no.
Candace got her. Candace got her. I don't know what happened. You know what, Natalie, let me jump in there. One of the things that I'll tell you is that I realize without a doubt that she is not writing her own stuff when it came to the original Mitch story, the one
Right.
where she first talked about Fort Huachuca, and Mitch was not on that. And I was sitting there listening to this, and I actually didn't watch that live. I was listening first to when Nate over at Valhalla VFT went through and kind of debunked it, or at least pointed out what he thought were, he was criticizing it. I don't want to get into a pissing contest of whether he debunked it or not. I feel like he did. There's some pretty good evidence there. But anyways, so as she's talking, so I watched it the first time and just took all this in, but then I went back and watched her full episode, and I was really listening to what she was saying and how she starts off that original story. And there was two things that stood out to me. Number one, it had all the signs of a psyop or propaganda, in that the way that was formulated, that story was formulated. Number one, showing you a lot of evidence of these events taking place, because she was showing clips from the 90s on the war on drugs with George H.W. Bush. So there was that. So it gets you nodding, it gets you agreeing, like, hey, this definitely happened. And then she goes off into left field with this Mitch story. The other thing that struck me very oddly is partway through that she refers to Mitch as the main character in the story, the protagonist, as the protagonist. And I was like, she was like, oh, and then we have the protagonist, Mitch. I was like, wow, that's really weird. And then it dawned on me that what I'm listening to is the hero's journey. It was a literary formula for that entire thing. It started off with a divine intervention, a divine experience, a call to adventure. Like, it was very formulaic how that was laid out. And I was like, there's no way that she did that. And so clearly her producers had engineered that entire story. And not only was it engineered with great storytelling, but it was also engineered for propaganda, the way that it was set up and the way that it was laid out. So no, I don't think that was the first time that it dawned on me, like, wow, we're dealing with something much more sophisticated than I thought we were. This isn't just a person grifting. It's not just a person lying. There's much more to it than that. And so, no, I think, again, I don't know, because the people that benefit from what she's doing, I mean, there's a lot. You can talk about whatever you want, whether we're talking about foreign adversaries, political adversaries of multiple types. But I do think that she is a witting participant at this point. At that point, I wasn't sure. I don't know if it's producers handling her or if there's other people behind the scenes. I think at this point it would have to be obvious to her, so I'm no longer giving her the benefit of the doubt. But I do, and then on top of that, when you look at the way this was set up with her sphere of influence and all of the other influencers and or social media personalities,
Right.
from the very beginning, this was coordinated. You had Ian Carroll, you had Ryan Mata, you had Baron Coleman, you had Coach Colin, you had Meg, the Village Cradle League. From the very beginning of this, they were all pushing her stuff. And then each one of these people have some downstreamers down from them that are also pushing this stuff.
Right.
So this has been a coordinated and engineered thing from the beginning, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it seems to be that they were heading this direction anyway. It's just Charlie Kirk's death was the springboard. That's what I believe. I believe I because there were some things, especially the individuals that you mentioned, their pivots. You know, I was befriended on X by them, just random individuals that sprouted out of nowhere, and they amassed a massive following. And you know, all of a sudden they were pro Trump, and I'm not saying at all that you have to be pro Trump. It's just the shift, the immediate pivot that they illustrated. And that's what got me looking at them very sideways. Like they were very rah Trump, and then all of a sudden it was like overnight just F Trump and the Israel narrative, you know, when it was just bombarding people with this Israel stuff. And it was like, I personally, you know, and I've spoken to Gary about this on his podcast. Before all this, I was a Christian and I was studying scripture, but I was not thinking about Israel like that. Like I wasn't, didn't covered on my mind, or I was not interested in geopolitics whatsoever. And ever since they were bombarding everybody with this Israel narrative, that's what got me looking a little bit closer. So, you know, I agree with you. I do believe that this was, I think this was a premeditated psyop, and Charlie Kirk's death was like a perfect springboard for all of them, because even when you look at their accounts, their history, when they were talking to Charlie Kirk, when they were replying back to his tweets, they all hated him. They were all, you know, very much against
what they all had in common prior to Charlie Kirk being killed was that they were all very, even more so. And again, I don't want to conflate. Look, there are people out there that are critical of Israel, and I think you have a right to be that. It does not make you anti-Semitic. Right. But to the degree that they tied Israel, they were obsessed with, you know what, I'll leave it at that. All of these accounts, what they had in common is they were obsessed with Israel and the alleged control of Israel that had on the U.S. And they also were extremely critical of Charlie Kirk and TPUSA, almost every single one of them. And then Charlie died, and then we had this pivot that went in that direction. And I agree with you. You know, there was, you know, they were already coordinating. Most of these accounts were already coordinating. There were some that jumped on afterwards because of the popularity of Candace that I had to research. Like I wasn't even really paying attention to Candace till really mid-November. And then I started because everybody was telling me about the Egyptian planes. I'm like, what does Egyptian planes have to do with this? And then I started seeing what she's saying. I'm like, people are buying this. This is absolutely nuts. And people will believe this. And then, you know, that's when I really started studying what she was doing and seeing it for the evil that it is.
You know, that's the interesting thing is that before Charlie Kirk's death, I mean, the biggest thing she was doing by far was the Macron stuff. And Macron stuff, no one serious really takes that seriously. And so what she did with that was that she managed to take QAnon, Michelle Obama meme, and then leapfrog off other people's work. I say work, you know, these people are also kind of crackpots. But as always, she never does the work herself. She's lazy, and she always just, you know, jumps off other people's back. So she takes this kind of fringe French conspiracy, realizes that she can use this because of the whole QAnon kind of, Michelle Obama type stuff. And so she runs with it and, crafts this narrative about Brigitte Macron having a penis. Again, it's like, why? Who cares? I mean, like, who cares? It's not true, but even if it was true, it's like, why does this matter? But what she does is that somehow she then makes this about, pedophilic elites who control the world, who are like sex trafficking children, all this kind of stuff that, is already out there. And especially people on the right tend to kind of, be enraged by. And she then made herself, like you're talking about with the hero's journey, into the chief protagonist, where she literally, after she got sued by Macron's, she then played the gladiator, and she then identified herself as Russell Crowe, who was bringing down the empire. And she then managed to use Charlie Kirk's death to exploit that, to then even make that about her pursuit to bring down this like pedophilic elite, to say that they even came after Charlie Kirk because of what she was doing with the Macrons. So this was always what she was doing. And that's where it's like, why is she doing this? Is she writing it herself? Was this her way of doing this to be able to finance the lawsuit that she knew was going to be very, very expensive? But this is a psyop in that way that, whether she knew it right away or not, I don't know if she did, but she managed to kind of segue Charlie Kirk's death into, sandwiching in there the Macrons, to then make it about her, to then make it about all these things. But to me, it all comes down to this top-down conspiracy, really. And that's what it always returns to, and that's what all these people have in common. It's a top-down conspiracy where there's a singular conspiracy where there's elites who are ruling the world, and then there's this like slave class that are under their thumb. Now, there's some truth to there are elites and there's governments in control, and that maybe they don't always, they don't have our interests, all these things, but there's not a singular conspiracy. That's the issue. But they make it into a singular conspiracy, and then she identifies herself firmly at the center, where she's the one that's standing up against that. And then, as you pointed out, she has all her little lieutenant lackeys who then, work as satellites to broadcast that. So, what's behind it? I'm not sure. I don't know. That's outside of my realm of what I know. But there's absolutely a psyop in that sense of there's this narrative that's been crafted that they're broadcasting out there.
I was just gonna say, when you talked about the Macrons and why she was interested, like she just came up with this weirdest claim, true or not, no one would ever sit down and say, "Oh, let me start series on Macron's wife not being a woman," but she did. But this is the same person, Nathan, that wrote those articles I just said. Having affairs are romantic. Marrying a gay man is smart. Where those topics? How about those topics? Where did they come from? I don't think at that time, when she was 18, 19, 20, someone wrote for her. I think she does have a very, I don't want to use a positive word for how her mind is very unique, is what I'm going to say. But how does she use it is unfortunate.
Well, I think she's extremely impressionable in that I guarantee you the way that she came up with the whole Brigitte Macron narrative was that she read Passard Xavier's book, or read parts of it. That's where this all started. And where you can look to that as well, she was like, oh, just last month I read a book about MK Ultra. And now she inserts MK Ultra into this narrative out of the blue when there's no viable link. It's like, oh, well, he had a bone in his leg and he has a bone in his leg, so clearly they're both in on this. Right. That's where she gets this stuff. It's like it's literally like the mind of a child.
Yeah.
Where she makes these connections that no rational person would.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? She's not well read. I don't actually think she's a particularly intelligent person.
I agree.
That's
with
why,
that.
and that's what I have the question about the fiction books and the fact that according to her, she read only fiction books for 10 years. You know what that does
That's
to
the
your
thing,
brain?
like Gary's right. She'll read chaos, and then literally
Yeah, and that too.
everything is connected to chaos. You know,
Now everything is
um,
connected to chaos. On her episode 235 or 236, she says, what we learned, ladies and gentlemen, what we learned today from the book Chaos is that when the government wants to hide something or lie to you, they throw out so much information that you no longer know what's true or not. And she's using the same tactic she learned from the Chaos book, except the government is not doing anything. In fact, she's complaining why they're not giving information, why they're not talking. She doesn't understand, or maybe she does, that it's an ongoing investigation. Okay. So she's using that same thing that she discovered in the book Chaos.
but this is where I think when you were saying about the articles that she wrote for Degree 180,
Mhm.
you even said earlier that even what she was writing was out there for a Democrat and for a lefty at that point in time. And I think that really does kind of nail what she does. She this is the thing, is that her whole currency is engagement. It's all about intention. She doesn't need money. She's got plenty of money. It's all about engagement and attention. So she's found that the way to do that is to say the most outrageous, extreme things. So she did that when she was on the left. She started a doxing site that encouraged doxing of minors, and she got cancelled for that. I then think that she attempted to be a legitimate voice on the right when she, joined with PragerU and then with Daily Wire. But I think the thing that she finds is, for her, she doesn't get the reward of being a medium fish in a big pond. She would much rather be a big fish in a small pond. And so that's what she's found. And she's found that over and over again. Push things as far as they possibly can. Take things that get attention, push it as far as you can. She'll be then rewarded by outrage and engagement. And I think we saw that with the Charlie Kirk assassination in real time. That's something where it started off where she was in the realm of reality with that. She was talking about these kind of things. And then immediately it's like Israel, Israel enters the fray, and then it becomes about Israel. And then you see that she then kind of gloms onto TPUSA. Maybe TPUSA knows, Josh Hammer. And then you see that she's now using this to settle scores, to push an agenda, and to push it as far as she possibly can, because that's how she gets rewarded with engagement. It's over and over again. It's what she does. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And that's why you can never predict where she's going to be in 10 years, because she has no values. She has no morality. There is nothing consistent. Tucker Carlson, you talk about that idea of, like, we all talk about what happened to Tucker. He still has conservative values around family, conservative values that are still there, even though a lot has changed around Islam and other things. Candace, there is zero consistency. You cannot find one thing that she believed in 10 years ago that she still believes in now. People change. People don't change that much. They don't completely abandon everything they believe in. She does, because she believes in nothing but engagement and attention.
One thing that I wanted to pepper on top of all this is the fact that, we haven't mentioned the bots, because I believe that this contributes to the mass psychosis that is being expended by the platform of Candace Owens and those like her. And, how many reports have we seen, by the NCRI, for instance, who has, published reports on foreign influence, foreign bots. And ever since, Elon Musk did the unveiling of locational, accounts and where they were originated from, now we're seeing that there's a lot of foreign influence that's, being infiltrated on the social media platforms. Gary, what in your perspective, how is this a national security threat? If you do have that type of foreign influence.
Yeah. So, again, you don't even need these big grand reports. If you're into social media like we are, you can see it and spot it right away, where suddenly your page is flooded by all of these bots talking trash to you, that, like, it makes no sense, and it's not even coherent. A lot like her narratives, there's no coherence to it. And then you look at their profile in a lot of these bots, because of what Elon did, they're very low follower count. And then you can see that all they've been doing is retweeting everything that Candace has said and her whole, ambassador group going on there. And it's just, it's non-organic. It doesn't look normal, and it doesn't look natural. And it's very clear what's going on. So, but besides that, back to your question, this is what enraged me to the point where I'm like, I don't care what this cost me, because I thought it was going to cost a lot. And luckily, it hasn't cost me nearly as much as I thought. But I was willing to risk it all for the fact that I could see what was going on and the national implications of this. And the reason behind it, I want everybody to think about this. Understand where this goes, because what happened a couple days after Charlie Kirk's assassination is we had this coalescing of the right. Everybody was on a united front, and there was no way that we were going to lose the midterm elections. Everybody was reinvigorated. But what had to happen was the spotlight and the blame had to be taken off the left. And that's immediately what she was doing, whether it was at the behest of someone else or it just fit her prerogative or her plan or her motives, whatever else. But that's what happened. And then that's where we saw these massive bots come in. And we saw the amount of influence come in, because the left had to take, not only did they have to take the spotlight off them, in a perfect world, what they would do is actually fracture the right, which they continue to do, and they continue to do with this. So it was a perfect opportunity for them for multiple, again, I don't care if it's foreign influence that just hates Trump. I don't care if it's, the globalists and the leftists that are out there protesting right now. All of these people that have millions and millions of dollars behind them. Like, this is an easy push. Throw a couple $1 million at bots and bot farms and these sock puppets and all the other things that push her narrative while suppressing the opposition narrative. And that's what they've done. And the problem is that Candace isn't even sophisticated. It's like, I think to most people, this is very easy to see through, but yet she's able to influence and convince millions of people. And that's the problem. When you get somebody in the future, Candace is just the mascot now. We're going to get somebody that's much more sophisticated, that's going to be pushing political agendas, leftist agendas, by the way. That's where it's going to go. And they're going to be much more convincing, and this is going to be much more effective and more sophisticated than Candace ever was. And that's with the use of AI and all the other tools that are emerging. And we just have to be aware, and America needs to wake up, because if you could be fooled by Candace, you can be fooled by anybody. And this isn't even hard. It's obvious. So, that's my take on that. And that's what I want people to wake up. This is not about Candace. This is about a gullible America that is primed because we've been so abused by our government. We've been so abused. We have the trust in our institutions has been so eroded that now we don't even know what's right or wrong. And in my view of it, we now have a government that is much better. Let's just put it that way, and much more transparent than the Biden administration. And yet, because we're so resistant to believing whatever the government has to say, there's so many people that have this knee jerk to accept anything else, even though it has no evidence, no logic, and nothing else behind it.
It's a good point.
Oh, wait, can I just jump in, Natalie?
Yeah.
Just quickly. I'm not even American. I'm Australian. I in no way do I pretend to be American. I don't even weigh in on American politics. I try and stay in my lane. A lot of the most prominent media commentators happen to be American, and they have large influence in Australia. That's why I feel welcome to weigh in on this. But to jump off Gary's point, I mean, I don't see this as just about America. I see it as a war on the West. I really do. Exactly. It absolutely has impact down here on Australia as well. So we absolutely, when you see the axis of resistance, all of this stuff, it's attempting to really destabilize all of the West, and that is absolutely the bigger picture that everyone needs to realize. It's not about Candace Owens and crazy theories. This is the bigger canvas that really needs to be watched.
Good discussion. So let's round this out. What are some antidotes? I guess I'll punt this to Jeanette. This is your field. What are some antidotes to this mass psychosis and to the parasocial manipulation tactics, I think simply look at Nathan's videos, look at Gary's videos. They're showing you, they're illustrating that there are blatant contradictions going on here. There are blatant lies being told. What I mean, outside of that, that's my immediate answer. But what is your answer to like an antidote to the mass psychosis?
First, learning about the tactics she's using. Like we talked about emotional arousal, okay? We can talk about moral what is it, the when she has this, for example, putting normal facts next to scary things to so that the fear spreads to everything nearby. And I sent Gary the screenshots of like verified lies or the spreadsheet she used about human trafficking and TPUSA and Tyler Boyer. So she puts all those things next to each other. And so what she does is, so people need to learn all these tactics first. Once they do, they're gonna know what's happening because when these tactics are combined, they make claims feel obvious and convincing without proving them. And so when people know about these tactics, they start, they slow down, they question what they're seeing, they separate feelings from facts, and they're able to. But when it's, for example, the things she says, they're lying to us. We speak the truth. You are on the right side if you're listening. If you're, the things she says, like we're a group and it's us versus them. All these tactics, people need to know what's happening. Today she said, I had to talk to a priest. What is that? Borrowing. Forgot the name of the. It's called moral. I forgot, but um there's so many. I mean, there's so many, but I tried to come up with the most the 10 important ones. But so for example, few of them that I know, like if I was going if I had a show and every day I had to go live on YouTube channel, and if every single day I have I'm gonna say I'm speaking the truth. I tell the truth. I tell the truth. I only tell the truth. So now change that to I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. You get what I'm saying? So Natalie, so she, why does she feel the need to say that, use that phrase so many times, or the
Right.
words psychological operation? She's doing that.
Project, yeah.
Yes,
You're
projection.
projecting.
The first thing you said when we started the show, but like, so people need to know these tactics, and I can send them to you. You can talk about them on your shows, but there is a narrative stacking, anomaly pile up, because small things don't matter, but when you put them together, they look like something, real. Association mapping, guilt by proximity, that spreadsheet linking individuals, institutions, location, and serious allegations via adjacency. How it works: visual proximity substitutes for causation, implying connection without evidence, putting people close to bad topics so your brain assumes they're connected even when there's no proof.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I just want everybody to know too. Like, the reason Jeanette reached out to me, and we're gonna do a show, and we're gonna do a deep dive on all of this, kind of go through this at length, and it'll be, we need to talk to people and make sure they know the complexity of this and what's actually happening, so they can identify these things for themselves. So, look forward to that. We'll have Jeanette on just for a show, just for that.
100%. Well, yep, we're a little over an hour, and I did commit a time constraint. So, guys, thank you so much for jumping on. This was incredible. Just the thought that I thought we were gonna, the discussion I thought we were gonna have, we had, and this was really insightful. It was so good to hear your respective opinions. We'll just go around, let my audience and everybody else's audience that we're sharing here at this roundtable, let them know where they can find you. Gary, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, Paramount Tactical, pretty much anywhere you can search us. Again, we're on X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as well. I don't do that much on Facebook, but if you're watching this on our channel right now, the links are down in the description below, as well as all the contact information and the stuff for Natalie, Nathan, Jeanette. So make sure you go follow them as well.
Awesome. Jeanette, how about yourself?
I have a YouTube channel I barely ever use, but it's called Unmasked 1984. Or if you just go on YouTube and search Jeanette Garibian, I think you'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Nathan?
I'm on at the MilkBar TV on Twitter. I got a link tree there that links to all my other platforms. Also, I mentioned earlier that I'm being sued by Andrew Tate. So we do have a Give Send Go. So that's givesendgo.com/free speech versus Tate. That was dismissed in December by the judge, but it now looks like the Tates going to appeal, and this is going to really run up our legal bill again. So we are going to be having to do a push to raise more funds for that. But you can visit there if you want to donate. That would be really appreciated. But if you want to find out more about that lawsuit, the lawsuit's connected there and all the information, so you can read up on that.
Awesome. Guys, if you just hang for a second so I can say bye backstage, I'm just going to close this out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with all of us. I think this discussion was incredible. This was everything and more that I thought it was going to be. And, I learned a lot, and it's always great to, bump up your perspective with other people, especially with their own respective field. So I learned a lot. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for being respectful. Thank you to all the mods, respective of my mods, Gary's mods, all the mods in there, keeping the chat nice and tidy. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And if you have not subscribed or followed any of the guests on this episode, please do so. Anyway, guys, I love you, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye, guys.